Divine moments. Divine moments are invitations from God to rewrite individual corporate history. Divine moments are rarely recognized going into them. It's only in retrospect, looking back, that you recognize that was a divine moment. I'm glad I said yes to God. I'm glad I said no to the other thing. What I'm saying is divine moments sneak up on you unsuspectingly. You don't know what hinges on a decision in a moment. That divine moments are invitations that come from God, that when you have a yes in your spirit, despite what the front, how intimidating, menacing, or how far-fetched it may seem, when those have said yes to God, God releases something in them and through them that can change and rewrite the course of history. I believe that these great moments, what happens is choices pass before you in these great moments to claim your destiny at a whole nother level. 2 Kings chapter 13, there's a king by the name of Joash. I'm going to do this part quick. This king by the name of Joash is a king, and he's a bit compromised, to be honest. And I could go more history into that, but he's compromised. He is a king, a reigning monarch over God's people. During that time, an enemy nation called the Syrians, or people of Syria at that time, the Syrians came and attacked the people of God. In the midst of a crisis, what do we talk about? Crises are the seedbed for revival, or the seed beds of revival. Crisis becomes the catalyst to some of the greatest growth any of us has ever seen in our life. Some of my most difficult seasons in my life have also been my greatest growth seasons in my life. When everything's calm and relaxed, typically those aren't, for at least Sean Smith, your speaker, those aren't my best, greatest growth moments. Here's a crisis. So this compromised king runs to Elisha, the prophet. Obviously, he had been mentored by Elijah. He's got a double portion. This is Elisha, S-H, that Elisha. And he runs to him, and we know this from the passage. Elisha is about to die. He's weakened. And I believe that sometimes it could even be a metaphor. Sometimes you can look in a nation, it looks like the move of God. That which represents the Lord seems weakened. It seems like it's about to pass. And those are exactly the times when I believe divine appointments come, divine moments come to rewrite corporate and individual history. So he goes to him, give this compromised king credit. At least in his crisis, he knew where to go. I got to go to the man of God. I got to take it to God. And he says, oh, my father, the chariots of Israel and the horsemen. Different scholars believe that there were different interpretations of this. I think it was Matthew Henry's that really was kind of alluding to the fact that maybe the king was recognizing that the chariot and the horsemen, in other words, the military might of Israel was the prophetic, was this prophet Elisha. Some would say that, and I believe this as well, there had been such an attack against them as a nation that their armies had been decimated to a certain extent. And so in this crisis, the king comes, and so now here is the prescription. You want a national turnaround. You want to see your nation saved. If you do, this is what you need to do. So he tells him, the prophet tells this compromised king, Elisha tells Joash, open the east window. Why the east window? Well, we'll get to that. He says, now take an arrow, shoot an arrow out the window. He shot it. Well, today when nations go to war, a declaration of war is signed. That's how we know we're in war. In those days, scholars tell us you would open up a window. This is symbolic. You would open a window and shoot an arrow in the direction of the nation, and it was a declaration of war. So he's first getting him to get to the point of, you have got to understand that you have got to war against the threat. If you're going to see a national turnaround, you can't just bemoan the threat. You can't complain about the threat. You can't talk about how bad that sinner is out there and how bad that movement is, because you don't have the luxury as the solution to complain about the problem, because you're called to remedy the problem. Their arrows ought to fill Albuquerque, because folks are interceding, folks is crying out. We're declaring war on crystal meth. We're declaring war on cutting yourself. We're declaring war on depression. We're declaring war on violence. We're declaring war on sex trade trafficking. There ought to be arrows that fill, because we as believers must declare war on what the devil's doing. It's not enough to complain. You got a war. That's what you got to do. So he does it. Now, he says, okay, that is the arrow of the Lord's deliverance. Lord's gonna, you got your start. He says, now I want you to strike the ground until you have defeated Syria completely. Some people think that meant grab an arrow. I won't do this, but hit the ground here. Well, the word there, ground, Kil and Delich are good at this, explaining this. The word there is not floor, it really is ground. And in the context of strike, it actually means shoot the arrow. So he's actually not just striking the ground, and I'm not here to quibble over that, but I think it is significant that he's still told to continually do what he did. He shot an arrow out the window. Now he's got to keep shooting these arrows. The word is not floor, the word is ground. Strike meant, as it relates to an arrow, it means to shoot. So he's being told to shoot. So he shoots one arrow, he shoots two arrows, and all of a sudden he shoots three arrows and he stops. And he thinks he's good. Like, yeah, man, hey, I did it. I shot my 3 arrows. Come on, man, we're doing this. Hold that thought. I was raised inner city Oakland by a Southern black grandmother. My dad was not in the picture. My mom was working a couple jobs. We grew up in economically challenged. Okay, Poe. Polex grew up Poe. My grandmother taught me a lot of things, and I could go into my grandma's stories, but I just want to get to this thing. She taught me how to say no, sir, yes, ma'am. She taught me honor. She told me that your word ought to mean something. My grandmother was struggling as an alcoholic, functional alcoholic, but she had enough church background and knew what was right. And then when I was a junior in high school, she goes to a small Pentecostal holiness storefront church, walks forward, gets delivered, comes back to her apartment, breaks all her alcohol bottles, literally on the spot. And I'm like a junior in high school. I'm not saved. This is not computing. And I'm like, no, grandma. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, you got to go to a Betty Ford chill out center. You got to do detox. You got to sign, I'm thinking all these things. You got to go, and grandma, she's already prophetic. So now it's unleashed. She said, grandma don't need to take 12 steps. Grandma just need to take 1. I came to Jesus. He set me free. I thought to question my grandmother more, but even as a teenager, my grandma could go grab a calcified biscuit, hit me upside my head, okay? She could throw it, and with accuracy, hit me in the head, come back like Thor's hammer, so I wasn't gonna question her any further. My grandmother also taught me some other things that I kind of had to unlearn, and I get it. Some of that was cultural and time and specific to her, how she grew up. She says, I had a friend named Ray Jones, and he had like 5 or 6 brothers and sisters. His dad would come home sometimes he wouldn't, he'd stay out. But Miss Jones, she's making it happen in the apartment. She's cooking up food, trying to feed all her family, and they're struggling. I mean, they're on whatever they can get to get some food, and when they're handing out cheese in our neighborhood, we're getting cheese. When they hand out whatever they hand out, that's what we're eating during that time. For the record, that cheap government cheese makes the best cheese sandwiches in the world. I'm just saying, I don't know if you could cut it because you almost have to do the knife like this. But when you do cut it and melt it, oh my God, okay. I just had quick fellowship with about 4 people over there. My grandma said, when you go over to Miss Jones' house, my friend Ray Ray's mom, she's gonna ask you, are you hungry? She said, boy, you need to say no. She's gonna ask you 2 times, are you hungry? You need to say no. She's gonna ask you a 3rd time, are you hungry? She says, okay, grandbaby, you need to say no, but you could say, hey, I'll take a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'll take some sardines and crackers. I don't know why there was always sardines and crackers. I'll take Spam. To my beloved millennials out there, Spam is not unwanted junk mail. It is pink meat in a gelatin in a can. Not quite sure what animal it comes from, but it is. My grandma would fry it, put it on an egg, and it was slamming, okay? I'm just saying, I'm just saying, all right? Why? Because if I ate off the main menu, that meant somebody in the house wasn't gonna get a full serving. Fast forward that. I'm saved, I'm a college student. Because of the unlawful murder of my dad, awards and monies was given for me to go to college. I went to this college, Northern California, major in computer engineering. That is actually what my degree is, one of my degrees. And I got saved and got part of this campus program. My campus pastor was coming to Texas. How many of you know everything's big in Texas? Big boots. They got a mini mart there called Buc-ee's. Anybody ever seen a Buc-ee's? That thing is Costco as a gas station mini mart. I mean, it is huge. They got big boots, big hair, big everything. It's just big state. We're there. my mentor is being invited. I'm just a student in the campus ministry. He invites me along, being invited to speak at a church. One of the elders in the church picks us up. I don't know this. I had no idea until later the socioeconomic level of this man. And so he picks us up, and I say this thing, the difference between rich and wealthy is sometimes subtle, but rich people let you know they're rich. Wealthy money is quiet. And that's when they're worth like $6.3 billion. And they had holes in their jeans and driving a used beater. And you just didn't even know it, right? So I didn't know it until he drove up the runway to his mansion. And then he goes and gets something. And he says, you boys will be staying with us. Talk to the pastor. Well, I didn't know it. He had oil fields. He owned oil fields. He was an oil guy. And so he got keys and he drove past his mansion to a mini-me mansion. So when your mansion has a mansion, you're wealthy, mini-me mansion. He walks in, true story, my campus pastor goes to the restroom because he has to use the restroom. I'm hungry. Now, come on, you're in college, you're hungry, right? So he walks, he has a 3-door refrigerator, and he stands and he says, hey, Sean, are you hungry? And my eyes just did like this. I go, no. He said, are you hungry? No. He said, are you hungry? True story, no exaggeration. He said, are you hungry? I said, oh, can I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? The guy looked at me so crazy. He goes over to his cupboard. Our cupboard was like a little shelf above our sink in our apartment. This man has Sam's Club. He had Costco. He opened up people handing out hors d'oeuvres and freebies. He goes all the way to the back, grabs a peanut butter jar so neglected it needed a sozo. That's how neglected. The man never ate peanut butter. It was to catch rats, I guess. I don't know, right? He opens up his 3-door refrigerator. There is like pheasant under glass. There's prime rib. There's Texas. He had a chef come in and cook special food for us. He pushed all that aside and grabbed some, he had the rest of the jelly. It was stuck on the shelf, right? Got the jelly off. And all of a sudden, about that time, I'm making my peanut butter and jelly sandwich. My campus pastor comes out and says, hey, I have that pheasant under glass. I have that prime rib. I have that. And I'm just sitting there with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And all of a sudden, the Lord reminded me of that because he said, so many of my children are settling for spiritual peanut butter and jelly sandwiches when the filet mignon of the Spirit could be had. So many of my children are sitting back allowing spam-level services when I could turn this thing into filet mignon revival if they would just believe me for that. And so for the sake of time, I'm going to get right to it. What was my mistake? I'm only going to tell you one point on this. My mistake is simple. And this is the mistake that we're not going to make. My mistake was I didn't know what's on the menu. I think revival reveals what's on the menu. Until you familiarize yourself with moves of God, until you read about what God has done in history, beginning in the Bible, hello somebody, and then get books on revival, until you go to nations, Brazil and others that are in the midst of move of God, and you begin to see what's on the menu, all of a sudden, I remember the first time in the 90s, I went to Argentina and I came back, and this is not a knock on what we're doing great stuff, but I was ruined for a quiet little predictable Bible study, which I think is valid. Amen. I think sometimes it's not going to be all this, all that stuff. Cool. But I'm saying I was wrecked for that. It wasn't okay to just kind of dismiss stuff. I wanted to go for broke for God. I had seen what's on the menu. And when you see what's on the menu, you hunger for the more. So many of us, we don't realize we settle for the less because we've not checked the menu lately. In revivals, God opens up the 3-door refrigerator and he begins to show you what he would do in the Cambridge revival, what he would do in the Welsh revival, what he would do in the Hebrides revival. Come on, 72 and 76-year-old women, Peggy and Christine Smith, gotta love their last name. Okay, somebody. What he would do at Azusa Street, come on, with W.J. Seymour, Frank Bartleman, and what he's doing today. And in fact, what he's put, and I believe he's earmarked in heaven, this move of God, mark my words, it's about to hit this nation. It's going to shock folks, and it's going to be the greatest move of God that we've ever seen. I believe it's going to be a revival of revivals.